What's up, people? We're gonna hang out over here today because the studio is an absolute disaster. I've been installing power stations, cleaning up the cables. There have been monsters lurking in every corner, but I'm excited because once I'm done with that, it's all plug and play. But today I want to pick up where we left off in the last video. So in the last video we made a list of traits, adjectives that describe us. If you haven't done that part yet, go back to that last video. I'll link it here because otherwise this one isn't going to make a whole lot of sense. Today I want to cover 5 ways to refine and focus this list into values that you really believe in, goals you can work toward, and metrics that you can use to evaluate your work and even decisions in your life. Just like last time, I'm going to go over each step and then I'll demonstrate using my own list. So let's get to work. Alright, let's get into this. We're gonna need this. First, we're gonna copy them into the computer. This is a lot of words. Send it down quick. Alright, so we got our list. Just gonna alphabetize it real quick. Knock out some of the ones that don't apply to me. Don't really mean anything to me. Not a big fan. This one came up a lot. Okay, clean them up. Now I just gotta group them up. So we have this big list of words that describe us in different ways. The first thing that we need to do is to group that list up into themes. These themes can be whatever you want them to be. There isn't really like a right way to do this. It all depends on how you think. Think about it this way. You ever notice that grocery stores are never laid out the same way? You go to the store, you want some vegetable dip. Where the hell's the vegetable dip? Is it over by the vegetables? Maybe it belongs over by the condiments. Is it next to the sour cream and the other spreads? Is it by the chip dips in the junk food aisle? Stay out of the junk food aisle. Once you start grouping these together, you'll see some logical groupings will start to appear. Don't worry about them too much right now. We will refine them into what actually matters as we get into them a little more deeply. First, just group them into categories that make sense to you, and then you can go from there. Just be sure that there is some kind of clear relationship between the attributes in each group. They should either mean similar things to you, they should apply to similar things, or even be synonyms of the same words. All right. The first grouping emerges. All these antis that are in here, not really my thing. These two will start a group about what kind of roles or titles I give myself. It's gonna be a long one. Alright, so now we have a big list. Let me walk you through what themes emerged for me and how I was looking at it, in case that's helpful. This top row, absorbing, actualizing, developing, exploring. Trying to be sort of a lifelong learner and not the type of person who thinks they know something and stops learning. The second group is things I wish people would think when they see my work. I don't think I'm there at all, but these are kind of goals I'd like to set for myself. Alone, balanced, calm, all of this. These are some of the ways that I feel grounded. Aloof, casual, free, jazzy, laid back. These are the kind of impressions that I hope to give to people. Animator, art director, artist, bass player. This list just grew out of titles, things that I've done, ways that I could describe myself. Anti-authoritarian, anti-bureaucratic, anti-controlling. These are just things that I don't like. Attention to detail, attentive, control. This list here is my approach to my work. Collaborative, compassionate, considerate, cooperative. These are all things that I try to be with other people. Democratic, diplomatic, egalitarian. These are sort of political worldview leanings in a way. Embarking, journey, pioneering, traveling. It's just a big goal of mine to get around and see more of the world. Funny, joker, levity, surprising. I try to be these things, I'm not sure. Honest, modest, moral, rational, value-driven. I feel like that one maybe could get lumped in with one of the other ones. Hopeful, nostalgic, optimistic, uncertain, upbeat. These are my views of the past and the future. Alright, so to save time, I'm going to cut out some of the weak ones before even digging into the next step. Stay tuned. Scholarly sounds a little too stuffy. Teacher doesn't make me a student. I think that applies elsewhere. Never liked the word sophisticated. It doesn't mean what people think it means, and it just sounds really pompous. I feel like most of these could go. I need to pick something general. I'm more of a generalist than any of these things. Don't know that I've mastered anything. Maker. I don't know why that word feels dirty to me. It seems like the most hipster way. Maybe I should just throw artisanal in there. These slants are important to me. I don't know how important they'll be to my brand. We'll see how they last through the process. I mentioned how I feel about perfectionism. I'm gonna pull out the ones here that feel like they put me in a bucket when I don't belong in. I really like to keep it more general than that. Alright, great. So now we've got some nice thematic little buckets that we've put all of our attributes into. For our second exercise, let's get a thesaurus and really dig into these. I highly recommend Roget's thesaurus for this. You can pick it up for just a couple of bucks. I like Roget's because it groups words based on a proximity of meaning. So maybe you'll see words near your words that aren't exactly synonyms, but they're a better fit for what you were trying to describe in the first place. Or sometimes you'll run into words you just hadn't even thought of. It's an excellent tool for writing, gathering your thoughts. I recommend it across the board. We're going to use thesaurus.com online because I don't know where my thesaurus is right now, and it's based on Roget's thesaurus, so we'll be able to get through the exercise. The goal here is to find the most perfect word that describes what we are trying to say. But what does that mean to you? I guarantee that we're all going to differ a little bit on this. Does professionalism mean experience, skill, demeanor, qualifications, candor, authority? Let's go wide here and just try to find the words that resonate the most deeply with us and throw away the ones that don't along the way. Alright, so I cut back my list. And now it's time to explore the thesaurus and see if we can find the best words. Permeable makes more sense than absorbent here. Maybe not meticulous. I like detailed. That makes sense to me. Passionate. Everybody says passionate. What does it even mean? I'm gonna drop it. I think we have something stronger here. The third exercise is gonna be easy because it's the same as the second exercise, except this time we're going to be focusing on antonyms. For every attribute, there are two different kinds of antonyms that will help us. The first and most straightforward is to find the antonyms that most strongly oppose the thing that we stand for. For example, if we were using the word professional, maybe to us that means never being sloppy. We're looking for strong polarities. We need a linguistic adversary, a word villain, because a big part of what we stand for is what we stand against. We need to know our heretics and our naysayers, the embodiments of what we are not, to help strengthen our stances. After all, like I mentioned before, we are not here to please everyone. The second type of antonym that we want to look for are opposing qualities that we also value. Some of our values are going to weaken and not feel as strong to us when we realize that we also value their opposite, and thus that'll help us cut them out of the picture. But in some cases, we're really strongly going to value both extremes, and it's important that we hang on to that. If we value the thing that feels like it opposes the thing that we value, a lot of the time this means that a shift in language or a shift in perspective is going to help us straighten it out. Alright, you guys, you may have noticed it is another day. Excited to get back into this. I did not say this was a fast process. So where did we leave off? So I went through my list and I found the synonyms, the words that I liked a little bit better, cut out some of the weaker ones, and basically I still have a ton of words here to go through. But I'm a lot happier with the words that I do have. So we're just gonna copy this list over, and now we're going to explore some words we don't like so much. So I'm just kind of popping through and checking out each of these words, and not just looking at the bottom here for the actual antonyms, but also looking at the synonyms to see if any jump out at me as just not a good fit. Ignorance, that's a great one. Remaining ignorant of something and knowing that you're ignorant of it, now that's just stupid. Biased, that might not be a strong word because everybody's biased. Prejudiced, now that's a bad one. That means you've made up your mind about somebody or something before you even have the facts. Oh, I don't think this coffee's gonna make it. Selfish, egotistical, self-centered, conceited, smug, self-serving, stuck-up, vain. I think I struck a nerve with myself here. Alright, so we got through the list. Now I'm gonna go cut back on some of these red ones here. Stuff like this, violent, angry, I hate these things, but I don't feel like they strongly need to be included here because they're not really something I'm prone to anyway. What I do want to focus on are some of the more dangerous things that might creep in. Alright, so we have a good list of antonyms here, some negative things that I don't want to be. Now in general, I'd like to say, if your list isn't this long, good, because I'm really making it hard on myself. But on the bright side, at least I can show you guys how to deal with the worst case scenario here. So now we have a really strong list of attributes. Let's start putting them to the test. This fourth exercise is called spectrum analysis. Basically, we're going to pair our attributes against each other and they are going to fight to the death. We're going to figure out which ones emerge stronger and which ones don't mean as much to us as we thought they did in the beginning. The way that you pair these is the most important part of this exercise. You need really good pairings to get really good results, so let me start with a couple of tips. First, let's go through those pairings that we talked about before where you kind of value two things that seem to be in competition with each other. I'm going to keep going with this example of being professional. What if you also want to be fun? Professional and fun are both great qualities. They're not necessarily mutually exclusive, but do you want to be perceived as more professional or more fun? So start off with some pairings like this. Playful versus serious. Tight versus loose. Hip versus unique. So for the next set of pairings, let's put together words that mean the same thing from slightly different perspectives. Maybe this time it's professional versus classy, tight versus contrived, hip versus trendy. The more that we can weed out these closer synonyms from each other and get down to the good ones, the better that we'll be able to prioritize our values. Now that we're done with that, let's reorder our entire list based on those results. Start with your strongest leanings. Those should be at the top of your list. Next, obviously, would be the moderate leanings. And towards the bottom is where we're going to put the things that were neutral. If it didn't end up in one of those three places, you're probably safe to get rid of it unless it really means something to you. And even with the neutralities, take a moment to question them. It's not necessary that you throw out your neutralities just because two opposing things were equally important to you, but sometimes it does tell us that stronger values lie elsewhere. Use your judgment, but make sure that you do reduce the list at this step. And don't be afraid to kill your darlings if they don't really mean that much to you. Too many attributes is just going to lead us into a fuzzy sense of identity that will be really difficult to put into practice in any meaningful way. Alright, so for the spectrum analysis, since I have way too many words here already, what you can do is that you can just attack each one in groups. So that's what I'm going to do. Alright, so now we're going to take the most similar ones and dissimilar ones and pair them against each other and see where we land. So, I need to go through and do all these, but let's pick one grouping that is like a good illustration of what you're looking for in a spectrum analysis. Okay, so the really super synonymous ones that we want to cut back on, that's the first type. Now the second type, let's go into some of these positive attributes that kind of butt heads with each other in a different way. I'll show you what I mean. So I want to be casual, but sometimes that doesn't necessarily mean being stylish. I want to be laid back, but I also want to be tasteful. Now the last kind is the obvious ones. We're going to take the words at the bottom, the polar opposite to the words at the top, the synonyms versus the antonyms, and we're going to pair them up so we can see if we really want to be something or not be its opposite more. You might notice I'm not pairing every word. This is not an exact science. When you get to the end, you're going to have words that you maybe didn't pair against something else. They're not really going to fit into a point system approach. The point of this isn't really to mathematically score your values against each other. It's just to get you to think about them. So when we get to the end, the way that you interpret this, it relies very much on your goals and your interpretation of these words. So I've got a good handful here. Let's go through this group as an exercise. Casual versus easygoing. Pretty neutral on that. Easygoing versus laid back. Again, I'm neutral. Loose versus casual. I like the perception of casual a little better than loose because loose can also mean sloppy. Natural versus laid back. I am naturally laid back, so that's a silly distinction. Casual versus stylish. Again, leaning towards casual. Laid back versus tasteful. It's a little more important to be laid back. So laid back versus not being apathetic. Generally don't feel like I'm an apathetic person, so gonna lean stronger towards laid back. It means a little bit more to me. Independent versus helpless. I hate the helpless victim mentality, but I'm gonna put my leaning a little more towards independent. I like the positive connotation of that. Natural versus contrived. I really don't want to be contrived, but sometimes something might be a little unnatural. I'm gonna lean towards not looking contrived. I'm not nearly as worried about being stylish as I am not being flashy, so I'm gonna put that strong over here. Do I want to be stylish or tasteful? I definitely want to be tasteful more than stylish. And do I want to be casual or not sloppy? I'm going to lean a little towards casual again. I'm not too worried about being perceived as sloppy. Okay, so what do these tell us? First of all, I feel like I could drop loose because it's kind of synonymous here, but I like casual better than that, so we're going to gut that one out of there. Next, casual, easygoing, laid back, natural. We have a tie going on here. So I think easygoing rolls into casual because casual would not only apply to your demeanor but also to your environment and things. So I think it'd be more helpful to have a word like casual. Laid back, I like the feel of that over casual, even though the meaning of casual is important. I'm gonna go with laid back because I like it. Natural versus laid back. I don't know. Casual and laid back are better than stylish and tasteful. Not gonna mess with that just yet, but we'll keep that in mind. Okay, now looking at some of the negatives. Not too worried about being apathetic, helpless, or sloppy. See how these didn't work very strongly against their opponents here? That means I'm just gonna kind of pull them out because they're not gonna help me that much. They're not that important to me. I didn't try weak out here, but I don't feel like that's going to do me much good here either, and it doesn't fit into this grouping that well. Tasteful over stylish. Stylish lost against casual and against tasteful. Obviously, I'm not that stylish, not that worried about it. Alright, so check it out. We just took that huge list of whatever and got it down to 6. Do that with every group you have. If you can do it with all the words at once, that's great. And as you can see, I took some liberties here. You really can do it the way that makes sense to you because that's more important than anything else. I'm gonna go ahead and do this for all of my other groupings, and when I'm done, we'll talk about the next step. All right. Where was I? It's beautiful out there. You can hear the birds are into it. That drives Jody insane. This is a multi-beverage process. So yeah, really before I even get into this group, I cut that one down pretty far with things I wasn't too worried about. These 3 here are kind of big ones for me though. Oversharing. I worry in my videos so far that I have that tendency. I'm not really like that in person. Critical. I am critical. I don't like being critical. And self-centered. I don't feel that I'm self-centered, but these videos very much have been about me so far, and I'm really dying to branch out and bring other people in because it's just, I really want this to help you and teach you this process. And I feel like the way to do that is to show you how I go through it. But then in the end, I watch these videos back and here's a guy talking about himself. That's just great. So, looking for the medium in there. Looking for a nice balanced place to land. I don't feel like I'm there yet. Yeah, it's another day. Alright, so this one was interesting. I thought that egotistical was a pretty bad word, right? It is. But this is an example of how this analysis makes you look at things differently. When I tested it against some of these other words, other things I never would want to be, I found that it wasn't as big a deal as I had made it in my mind. Actually, some of the things that egotistical people do that bothers me. If somebody is a little full of themselves but they're not an asshole, I guess it's not nearly as annoying as if they're stubborn, hateful, prejudiced, just looking for an argument. Anyway, it's exactly that kind of perspective that we're looking for here. The fifth and final exercise is called a paired comparison analysis. Check the description of this video for a link to a worksheet that you can use. Now this is very much like the spectrum analysis, except this time we're literally going to pit everything against everything. We are going to reduce our essential list down to just the most essential. So we make a grid and we put all of our values along each axis. We're going to leave out cells that repeat and cells that pit an attribute against itself. And that leaves us just shy of half of this grid that we actually need to fill out. So for every cell in the grid, for every pairing, I want you to score them from 0 to 3 based on their importance. So if two positive attributes pair up, you need to choose which one is more important and how much more. A 0 means that they're equally important. A 1 means that one is slightly more important. A 3 means that this value is absolutely, hands down, no questions asked, definitely more important to you. And when you pair your antonyms or traits that oppose each other, ask yourself, do I more strongly stand for this trait or do I more strongly stand against this trait? Do I really care if people see me as professional or am I just worried that they might see me as sloppy? When you're done with this grid, you want to add up the scores for each attribute and then sort the list again based on the highest scores. It's up to you at this point. It depends on what your list looks like, but if it's still kind of long, go ahead and cut off some of the low ones. You really should have a pretty focused list by now, but just in case you don't be afraid at this point to shed a few weak values. Where you draw that line is ultimately going to be up to you though. As with all of this, it's based on what matters to you, so there aren't really any right or wrong answers. The whole point is to gain perspective. This last step's not as complicated as it looks. You really just want to compare each word against each other word so that a priority emerges. And so we don't lose track of the red versus the gray ones as we go along. What I'll do at this point, maybe it would have made sense to do it earlier, is to just add the word not in front of the negative ones. So why don't we just flip these to their antonyms and make them positive words? It's important to have some negative ones in there too, because there's certain connotations that the words hold, and that's kind of what all this is about, is the connotation of each word. It's to kind of refine down to those core ideas of what we do and don't want. I still have a lot of words in here, so I'm gonna make one final pass and just cut out anything that I feel is kind of still not as strong as some of the other words. I have so many words here, I'd have to use the alphabet a couple of times at least, so I'm going to do this paired comparison analysis for each group, cut out some of the weaker ones there, and then do a final round on all of them. Like I mentioned before, it's a little better if you haven't even been quite as nitpicky as I have and you don't have this many words, but I know I'm not the only one like this, so if you have this many words, just divide and conquer. For the purposes of our own sanity and a struggling 2008 MacBook that I'm working with here, let's cut out all the rows and columns from these tables that we don't need as we go. So this one only goes up to H, so everything past H we're just gonna I'll walk you through one set here. For each cell where the rows and the columns meet up, we're going to compare. We're going to pick a letter of who's the winner. If it's a strong winner, we're going to give it a 3. If it's just barely a winner, we're going to give it a 1. If they're tied, we're going to put a 0 in that column. And then I'll show you how to tally it up at the end. So, improving versus learning, I would say A is slightly more important to me. Improving versus open-minded. Well, now here I think open-minded is moderately more important than improving. Alright, so now we have the results. For each letter, we're just going to go through and we're just going to count up the points that they got. So for example, A, we've got 1, 2 points. Alright, so now I'm going to copy everything that's left over into the mega grid here. Another quick little tip, when you get to this step where you combine them all, make sure you're not carrying over your scores from before. Because if you compared more words in one of those subsets, they're all going to have relatively higher numbers. That doesn't mean that they're going to end up being more important to you than other things, if that makes sense. Alright, this is it, the big grid. It'll take a minute to tally these up. Alright, here are the final scores. A couple things I want to show you. For one, L and M here, authentic, genuine. They both had exactly the same results every time I compared them against another thing. Obviously, they mean the same thing to me. What's the point of having them both? I'm going to drop one out. Also, one thing you should be walking away with is a new perspective on the way you were looking at things. Look at my low performers here. Wanderlust and spontaneous. Wanderlust and maybe getting into travel videos and stuff I thought would be really cool. But it turns out that all these other things are more important to me whether I get to fulfill that or not. Same with spontaneous. Maybe I get a little predictable and that's okay as long as it's honest and it's entertaining and you learn something from it. Purposeful scored kind of low here. It's not that I don't want things to be purposeful, but sometimes I just want to have fun and not be worried about there being a big deep meaning behind everything. Alright, so I got mine split up into these 3 little buckets. I'm going to call this first one my values, the second one my labels, which is totally optional, but for me it made sense. And the third I'm going to call my work. There we have it, a nice concise little list that bundles up together a lot of my attitudes towards my work and where I want to see things go and how I see myself and what I want to strive to be. Why is this list so important? Well, I put a whole list of ways that you might use it here at the end of the worksheet if you're interested in checking that out rather than me getting into them all here. And yeah, it's been a process. So let's recap. We started with a big list of attributes. We grouped them into buckets based on the themes that emerged. We used a thesaurus to find the words that best mean what we're trying to say and also to look into the things that we stand the most strongly against. We used a spectrum analysis to force all of our ideas to compete and decide who gets to stick around. Finally, we did a paired comparison analysis to pit everything against everything and to take our final list of attributes and prioritize them based on what matters the most to us. And in each step, hopefully, we threw out some of the ones that weren't working for us. Alright, now that we have a list of the values that mean the most to us, we can actually start to put this to great use. Do you need to write a mission statement? Well, now you know what you stand for and what you want to bring into the world and the right words to use to convey it. Do you want to spell out your vision? Hey, now you have a list of ideals and goals that you want to work towards, things that maybe you're not doing so well today. Are you working on a color palette for your website? Now you know what mood and feelings that you'd like to evoke and you can pick the right colors for the job. Are you working on your logo? Are you trying to pick the right domain name? Are you trying to weigh out the pros and cons of accepting a new job opportunity? Are you wondering if you should give that person the second date or even the time of day? I think you see what I'm getting at here. Having this list can help you make meaningful judgments against your work and even aspects of your life. And if your values change over time, spoiler alert, they will. You can repeat these exercises every couple years and see if you're happy with the direction that you're moving in. As usual, links to everything you need are going to be down in the description. I'll put my results online and share them down there as well if you're interested in taking a deeper look. It's a geeky process, but it's actually really enlightening. I think you'll get a lot out of it. These are the exact same tools that agencies are using to brand products in big companies. So why can't we use them to explore ourselves? The most important part of this entire process is that it forces you to look at things from different perspectives and to challenge your own notions and ask yourself the really tough questions. Like it or not, we are all the product of our personal biases and our viewpoints. And if we ever want to create something bigger than ourselves, we need to find ways to see ourselves and our work from the outside in. We need to be really honest with ourselves and question everything along the way. Let me know in the comments if you discovered anything interesting about yourself along the way. If you're into this stuff and you want to see where it goes, you can subscribe and follow along as I build the brand for this channel. And if you're here for more personal branding, I've got a playlist here that you can check out. Thanks again for hanging out with me. I hope you enjoyed. Until next time, peace.